I had two things I wanted to talk to you about. See everybody with a poll in between. First of all, an update on the Sandy Grant program. The applications were due November 25th, and we received 21 applications totaling a little over $7 million. We have somewhere in the range of $10 to $11 million available, so we were probably going out for a second round. But if any of you know of eligible applicants, encourage them to get in touch with us, because this is an incredible opportunity to repair damage from Sandy in the eligible counties. So any help would be very much welcome.
Those counties are the city of New York and Long Island?
It's the city of New York, Long Island, and then the lower Hudson.
Was there a limit? You have to have, the applications have to be a certain size?
Well, we may change that, Bob, because what we did was say that the eligible applicants are municipalities or not-for-profits. And then we have a minimum of $10,000 grant request for planning and $25,000 for construction. And I know that SCLEA, for example, couldn't apply because they didn't have $25,000 worth of work that needed to be done. So we may lower that in the next round. So we're looking at changes, but we did get a good number of applications and some very good ones. We're just starting to review them. The other thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is the state plan. Every 5 years, we have to update our state plan for historic preservation. Our last one was covered 2009 to 2013. It's a National Park Service requirement. It's very important that we do it because we want to get the money, but it's also very important because it gives us a picture of historic preservation across the state. It's a plan for historic preservation for the state, not for this division, not for this agency, not for the SHPO, but for everybody. So we like to get a lot of input. The last time around we did workshops all around the state. I think this time we won't be doing workshops, but we have already sent out a survey monkey looking for information. We have also selected, I don't know, somewhere in the range of 60 people to interview and ask some in-depth questions. And at our March meeting, that will be a big subject of what we talk about: how to prepare the plan and to set goals. What was very interesting, I think, when we started looking at this was a number of our stated objectives, because what we do is the plan is for preservation in the state, as I said, but it also directs what we do as an agency and as a division and as the State Historic Preservation Office. And we set our annual goals for the National Park Service based on this overall planning. So when we went back and looked, a number of our stated goals have been achieved over the course of 5 years, which was very heartening, given the fact that we're not exactly in a strong fiscal environment right now. But the other thing that was quite striking was the number of changes that have taken place since 2009. At an agency level, the Division for Historic Preservation was reorganized, informed by the needs that were stated in the plan. We did an assessment of the state historic site and historic park system, and we developed that, and we're implementing that little by little. The division's information technology systems are being totally overhauled thanks to a large transportation enhancement grant. So the electronic database will be much more available to the public and to other agencies. And on a statewide basis, there were amendments to the state rehabilitation tax credit program that made it much more accessible and usable. And our use of the tax credits across the state is just enormous. And the governor developed the Regional Economic Development Councils, and also the Catholic History Program. We've had a lot more, some different issues that we're facing, like church closures that have been very significant in the state. And on an even broader scale, a lot of New York's established neighborhoods and communities have been affected by natural disasters. So the changes that we're looking at are very significant, and we're looking forward to seeing how that affects our plan. So we can give you the link to the survey monkey, but we will be talking about this at our next meeting. So any questions on either of them?
Ruth, does the board have a role to play in this process
Yes.
for developing the state plan?
Yes, and that's what we'll be talking about more next time. I think I forgot and neglected to mention that we have to have the plan completed by the end of December of 2014. So we do have some time. We'll definitely have a role.
Okay.
Ruth, from my own years of experience in this matter, I have only one question. Why would a 5-year plan appear to come up every 2 years? I mean, there's so much work
Time
involved.
is really difficult, you know.
Okay.
It does appear that way. Actually, we're into our 6th year already.
All right.
This is
We're
a
late.
function of government.
Thank you, Ruth. And I think we are ready now to start on review.
Did you say ready for me? I claim the first spot today because I have the best resource, so I'm just throwing down the gauntlet there. This is the First Unitarian Society Church in Schenectady. This church was originally listed in the GE Realty Plot Historic District in 1980, but it was judged non-contributing because at the time it was only 19 years old. So here we are 30 years later, and it has matured into a resource that is now more than 50 years old. But rather than we could have just submitted additional documentation to that district so that it could have been deemed contributing, but we decided that the building was important enough that it deserved its own individual nomination, so that's what we decided to do. The church is an exceptional example of modern architecture in Schenectady, designed by master modern architect Edward Durrell Stone. Built in 1961, it embodies features characteristic of Stone's work in the last phase of his career, including its long, low form with deeply overhanging eaves, the use of textural concrete and concrete grills, embellishments such as planters, pools, and fountains, and lush interior appointments. Now, it's possible to get a photo of this entire building because it's 335 feet long. Essentially, it's an enormous rectangle built on a concrete platform supported on footings. The building itself is supported by 18 oval-shaped reinforced concrete piers, and the walls are formed from double courses of 2-foot square concrete blocks that were designed by the architect to form continuous circles. Stone is one of our most interesting American modernists. As a young man, he was among the first American architects to design residences in the international style. We have 2 of them in New York that are listed on the register, the Mandel House in Westchester and the Goodyear House on Long Island. But over the course of his career, and particularly after he met Frank Lloyd Wright and was deeply influenced by him in 1940, he evolved from a strictly rational artist into an entirely romantic one, rejecting the discipline of classicism for the supremacy of individual artistic authority, which is the heart of romanticism. Criticizing the international style as too arid and too cold, he began to design works that were both more expressive and more ornate, with lavish overlays of rich materials and decoration. He continued to use modern materials, such as concrete, but he favored it for its plastic and expressive qualities. And one example here is the concrete block, which is both decorative and symbolic, incorporating a circle motif that directly relates to Unitarian beliefs. And of course, not everyone appreciated Stone's expressive phase, and some of his later works, such as 2 Columbus Circle, are among his least loved buildings. The qualities of luxuriance and symbolism continue on the interior. Most of the main floor is devoted to 100 by 100 foot Great Hall, and then within that, the major portion is the round worship space, which is defined by 6 oval columns and features 6 tiers of circular seating. Everything about this space is intended to evoke and enhance the Unitarian doctrine of inclusiveness and interdependence, from the yin-yang floor to the 60-foot dome which rises 40 feet from the floor and is supported by its decorative wooden truss system. And that's the only part of the building structure that is not concrete. Now, I have a couple interesting facts about this building. One of the reasons that the congregation hired a nationally known modern architect to design this new building is that its pastor insisted on it. He was a very progressive man, a fan of modern architecture, and he was determined that the new church be a signature building. And that minister, the Reverend William Gold, was the father of our very own Jim Gold, which I was very interested and surprised to learn. And I learned that from Elvin Stevens. He and his next-door neighbor, Donald Moshon, were architects and members of the congregation, and it was they who enticed Stone to come up and consult with the board on the commission. Stevens then served as the on-site consulting architect, and he designed several interior features such as the pulpit. And apparently, it was Stevens, who was then director of planning and development at SUNY, who mentioned to Stone one day on the way back to the airport that they were thinking of moving the SUNY campus uptown, and he took Stone to see the site, asking if Stone had any interest in the job. Stone was interested, and later he got the commission, possibly or probably through his connections with the Rockefeller family. Now, I had assumed when I started this project that Stone got the church commission because he was in the area for the SUNY job, but in fact it was the other way around. I found both of those facts to be really interesting, particularly the SUNY one. So we have the Unitarians to thank for this.
Kathy saw an excellent essay, good work on that, and such treasures in that GE building plot. It's really amazing.
We have, this is a CLG, and we have support from the city and from the commission. The commission would like us to take a careful look at the congregation's plan for restoration of the fountains out in front, and so I promised that we would, our CLG coordinator would give that special assistance.
Karen,
So-
one small change on
Yes.
page 3, section 8. It is, the Boston firm is Shepley Rutan Coolidge.
Shepley Rutan.
You have Shepley Butan.
Oh, okay, sure, thanks.
I was going to make that.
That's Wynn's job, with all the typos. I also want to point out how exact this is, even the carpet, all the Danish modern furniture, which I tried to squeak some out. But any questions about this church?
Not that we have a motion. Okay, Ron moves it, Paul seconds, all in favor?
Okay. Now, the next three presenters are going to be our new staff that we met them at Jones Beach. Jenny, Linda, and Jennifer, and they've been working with the NR unit since mid-October, and they've been extremely prolific. They've each done 2 projects for today. Some of them were rewriting and revising student drafts from Columbia, and some of them were projects that they researched and wrote on their own. I can't tell you how pleased we are with their work. They've gone on to do more projects that you'll see at the March meeting. Some of their projects are candidates for the Sacred Sites fund that we've been working on with Ann Friedman. And some of them were backlog projects that they picked up from staff. And I think Linda actually found a backlog project where the application was older than she is. So they all did a fantastic job, and we're really happy and grateful to have them on staff. So be gentle with them. So.
Good morning. My name is Jenny. You know it's Jen. So just with that front. Both of the projects that I'm going to present to you today are Columbia drafts from Andrew Dilkort's class. And here we have the New York Bible Society. It's in a major commercial district near Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And it's significant as an excellent example of streamlined neo-Gothic architecture in New York City, and for its association with the social and religious architecture of the history of the New York Bible Society. The New York Bible Society was founded in 1809. It's the second oldest Bible society in the United States. And their mission was to provide free Bibles in dozens of languages to people living in and around New York City and people who were passing through its harbor. The organization grew substantially at the turn of the 20th century to accommodate the needs of immigrants and soldiers, and they actually operated a stand at Ellis Island for more than 60 years. Later in the 20th century, they led the effort to create the New International Version Bible, which was the first modern English translation since the King James Version in 1611. This building was built for the New York Bible Society as their new headquarters in 1920-1921. It was designed by Wilfred Edwards Anthony, an architect who specialized in Gothic architecture. He's known for blending the Gothic with other styles, but this is one of his most innovative and modern designs. And I've got three sort of close-ups of the building here. You can see the streamlined Gothic, the commercial elements in that where it says Church of Sweden, it originally said New York Bible Society, and then the more traditional religious elements. Here's the interior. There in the upper left is the reading room, which is almost entirely intact. The building is now owned by the Swedish Seamen's Church, and they use this as their little coffee house, but it's still a reading room and library. And here on the second floor is the chapel, which really has not been changed. They've been very good stewards of the building. And that's the New York Bible Society.
If there are no questions, do we have a motion? Chuck, would you like to do that? Okay, Jennifer seconds, all in favor?
My second property here is the North Presbyterian Church. It's also in Manhattan, Upper Manhattan in the Washington Heights neighborhood. And it's eligible for its association with the development of the neighborhood and as an early 20th century Gothic revival church by Bannister and Shell. North Presbyterian was originally founded in 1847 and was located in Manhattan, but it was displaced by the construction of Pennsylvania Station in 1903, one of 16 religious institutions that had to move as a result of that project. So they immediately began looking for a new location. They sold their old church, and they ended up merging with the Washington Heights Presbyterian Church due to the availability of land in that area of town, the promise of a new public transit system, and the proximity to the wealthy Audubon Park suburb. In 1906, the Metro line opened the area to rapid development, and it was quickly filled with new apartments, commercial buildings, and churches. After this church opened in 1905, the congregation doubled in size within a decade, and in 1930, they were the third largest church in the Presbytery of New York. Now, the firm of Bannister and Shell specialized in religious buildings, and they were particularly proponents of the Gothic style. And one of the interesting things about this design is that it reflects new ideas about how modern city churches should be planned, designed, and used. By the early 20th century, religious organizations increasingly served a number of community, religious, and educational functions. And so they divided the church based on these functions. To the far right, you can see the portion of the church with a large window, and that's the sanctuary. And in the center is sort of our entry hall. And then to the left here is our parish hall. There's the sanctuary on the right. And here in the center is the entry hall. It's got the steps to the second floor gallery, the chapel there. And here's our parish hall on the left. That's part of the educational buildings on the upper floors. You see the long bands of doors there. That's so we can expand the space for larger programs. And there in the bottom is the dance hall, social hall of the building. And that's the church.
Any questions? Okay, we have a motion from Randy. Will Paul, will you second it? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations and welcome.
Okay, good morning. All right. This is the District Number 5 schoolhouse, today referred to as Green Corner School. It's located in the northwest corner of the town of Glenville in Schenectady County. The building is significant as an intact, representative example of an early 19th century one-room school in Glenville. longtime resident of Scotia, New York, Adrienne Karas, she has collected information for years about the school, and she graciously provided documentation that included not just photographs and a list of dates, but also oral histories from former students and teachers who confirmed the interior layout and also provided insight into the daily life of the students. For example, during hunting season, the teacher and boys would go pheasant hunting during lunch hour, and in the 1930s, a teacher's pay was $22 a week. Constructed around 1825, the building retains the iconic form for a 19th century one-room school, an image that is enhanced by its intact schoolyard, which is defined by a dry-laid stone wall, as seen in the bottom right photo. The segmental arch above the entry is an early 20th century alteration, and the existing door was installed in the late 1970s. A circa 1900-1902 photograph, shown in the top right corner, reveals a modest Greek revival entry. Photos dating to 1910 and later show the current configuration. While the exterior wall shows sign of deterioration, historic photos reveal a similar condition, which means that typical repairs were done over the years. Overall, the bricks are laid in common bond with blemish every 6th course and are further distinguished by a large number of carvings by students and teachers done over the years. And I did not make my mark when I did my second one. Currently, the windows are covered with plywood, and temporary bracing is installed on 3 sides of the building to stabilize the walls. On the interior, the schoolroom retains a substantial amount of historic fabric from various periods. Walls are beaded board, but the original plaster and lath survive, as seen in one narrow portion of the side wall where a couple boards were removed, noted in the top left-hand corner. To the left of the entrance, a partition wall once separated the vestibule/coat room from the schoolroom, as evidenced by the delineation in the floorboards noted in the top right photo. To the right of the entrance are built-in cupboards which held the school library books. The building functioned as a public school for 1st through 8th grades until it closed in 1946 when enrollment declined due to the centralization of school districts. The property was donated to the town of Glenville in 1976, and the school was restored as a lasting project by the town in celebration of the country's bicentennial. It was announced at the dedication ceremony that the school would be kept open as a museum throughout the summer and into the fall with afternoon tours available. Owned and maintained by the town, the schoolhouse continues to serve as a museum and is an important local landmark that reflects the evolution of the educational system in the town of Glenville throughout its period of significance. And that is the school.
Then, given the period of what we've seen, I would have expected an elliptical large plaster ceiling. Did anyone get their head up above the flat one?
I'm not sure.
You might want to suggest it to somebody locally, right? See what's up there.
Sure.
No further questions, Randy? Would you like to move it? Okay, wait a second, so I'll clear it.
Right, next, the Temple of Israel Synagogue, known today as Haven Ministries, which is a non-denominational Pentecostal church. The building is significant for its association with the first permanent Jewish congregation in Rockaway Beach, and as an intact example of an early 20th century synagogue representing the shift in design throughout the region to the classical revival style. Temple Israel was organized in 1895 with 11 members. For the first 5 years, the congregation met informally at hotels and in the homes of its members for services. The original synagogue, shown in the top left photo, was constructed in 1900, influenced by the Moorish style. In December 1920, a fire in a building located about 1 block away, a fire broke out in a building 1 block away, and due to the predominance of wood frame construction in the area and a strong northwesterly wind, the fire quickly spread and the original synagogue was destroyed. Within the first 8 months, reports from the Wave, Rockaway's local newspaper, noted the members of the congregation had raised $18,000 for the rebuilding of the synagogue. And fundraisers and drives continued throughout the year, and bricks were sold at various amounts ranging from $10 to $50. The building committee developed the slogan, "As you pay, we build." The classical revival design of both the facade and interior decoration reflects the changing architectural taste of the era. While Moorish-inspired synagogues were popular during the mid to late 19th century, following a discovery of ruins of Roman classical style in Jerusalem. Classicism then became the style of choice. Built of brick and iron and dressed with stone trim, the synagogue was designed in a fire-proof manner with almost no exposed wood. Completed in 1921, the building served a large Jewish community in the area until the Jewish population began to diminish in the 1950s, which defines its period of significance. The local newspaper reported, as the numbers of members trickled to a few dozen at the end of the 20th century, the congregation could no longer afford to maintain the building. In 2001, it shut its doors as a Jewish synagogue, and within the year, Haven Ministries purchased the building. According to the church administrator for Haven Ministries, the new congregation chose not to make significant alterations out of respect for the history of the Jewish faith. The fine execution of carved stonework featuring classical motifs on the exterior and the well-proportioned plaster details decorating the sanctuary reflect the craftsmanship of the synagogue. The sanctuary shown here is divided by 2 rows of pews and a center aisle leading to a raised platform, originally the bema, which now serves as an altar with simple wrought iron railings around. In the rear of the sanctuary is a horseshoe-shaped gallery, and metal rods extending from the gallery to the ceiling were installed for added stability. The craftsmanship and original design intent remains with intact Jewish iconography as seen in these photographs and serves as a testament to the building's history and the role it played in the community. The building received moderate damage from Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Specifically, the windows were damaged and are currently covered to seal from the interior from the elements. The high level integrity is still evident throughout the synagogue, and Haven Ministries continues to use the space as a center of faith and charity. And synagogue.
Thank you, Linda. There are no.
Is this one of the candidates for Sandy grant?
Only for planning religious institutions. It's really a shame that the federal government won't allow grants to religious
And
institutions.
the courthouse, which is coming up later, is also damaged by Sandy or not?
No, it's not.
It's not.
No, that's a future ITC project.
Oh.
Jim, would you like to move it?
Sure.
Okay, and when, do you want a second?
Yes, please.
Okay, all in favor?
Congratulations and welcome to you.
Thank you.
St. Anselm's Roman Catholic Church and School is located in the Bronx's Melrose neighborhood, and the property consists of the church building and also a school that's connected by a hyphen, which you can just see at the right there. St. Anselm's is being nominated under Criterion C as an excellent example of this sort of unusual Byzantine revival style. The complex is also significant under Criterion A for its role in serving the local community through its school and through hosting a variety of clubs and functions. The congregation was originally founded by Benedictine monks in 1892 to serve what was at the time a predominantly German immigrant community. They constructed a rectory building at the same time, which was demolished later in the 1960s. In 1892 to 1893, they constructed a one-story Gothic-style basement church on the property, which they utilized while they raised funds to construct the larger building. By 1914, the church was financially able to construct this, what they called the upper church. The congregation hired architect Gustav E. Steinbach in 1915 to design the new building, and it utilized the foundation of the previously constructed lower basement building. Steinbach was notable in the New York City area at the time, and he designed many churches in the area. Construction of the new upper church began on October of 1916, and the first Mass was held in the building on Christmas Day in 1917. This is a side view of the church. The design was inspired by the Hagia Sophia, which is in Istanbul, Turkey. It's perhaps the most well-known Byzantine church. It was designed in the 6th century. Characteristic elements of the Byzantine revival include this sense of a solid, massive brick wall with few sort of punctures through that surface, and the use of multiple layered domes to create the interior volume. Also particularly interesting is the use of tile and mosaics to create stylized geometric ornament, which is especially notable in the interior. This is the school portion. The school building actually predates
that church that we just took a look at, it was originally constructed as a freestanding building on the property and was not sort of connected to the church until 1916 and 17. The building was constructed in the classical revival style in 1908. When it opened in September of 1908, it served 560 students, and until 1941, it was a free school, so students didn't pay tuition. By the mid-20th century, the school served more than 1,200 students, requiring the construction of the addition, which you can see at the right, which was completed in 1956. Inside the church is filled with a variety of decorative murals, mosaic work, color, and ornament. Every surface is sort of decorated here. You can see a variety of these geometric stylized forms and motifs rather than sort of a more realistic treatment and approach. While originally built to serve the German community in the neighborhood, the church later transitioned to serve the Irish immigrant community, and presently the church is run by the Augustinian Recollect Fathers and serves a predominantly Hispanic and African American community. It should be noted the diocese has voiced their support for this nomination, and we also have a lot of support from the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. This is St. Anselm's Roman Catholic Church.
Jennifer, while the form is Byzantine, the tile work it is illustrated on page 5 of section 11.
Right.
Is Moorish. It's the Alcazar and the Alhambra.
Right. There's definitely that.
And it's interesting that Mr. Comerma was Spanish, the fellow who had worked for Vestavino and then broke away and then lost the suit. I'm sorry he lost the suit, because his work might have been wonderful to see. I think it's worth making mention of the Moorish influence in the tile work. But great nomination, and thank you.
I have a question. It's always wonderful to see a Roman Catholic Church approved by the diocese, archdiocese, for nomination. How unusual is this? I take this is not a parish church, but one that's under the control of the order, and so maybe not so much under the control of the cardinal.
Well, the archdiocese called, and they insisted that it was under their control, but they were in favor.
So
In fact,
is there a
someone
sense
said,
of-
I'm calling from the archdiocese, and I made the mistake of saying which one. Very put in my place, and I said, oh, I stand corrected. But I said I thought it was under the ownership of the order, and they said, no, we control it, but we have a relationship with them.
And is there a sense that they're beginning to loosen up a little about?
Well, he was very, very pleasant, and he couldn't speak more highly of Anne Friedman. So I think really I'm impressed by her powers more every day.
Okay.
She's really...
Okay. We'll move this nomination over. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Ron seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this is Hilltop, the Dorothy Reister House and Studio. It's located in the town of Cazenovia, inside what is known as the Stonehill Quarry Art Park. This view here is sort of closer to the street and looks up the art park property, and you can see why it gets its name Hilltop. It's sort of set way back on that little promontory in the distance. The art park was established in 1992 by Dorothy Reister and others as a way to protect her vision of combining art and nature and to preserve the natural landscape of her property. Originally, the house and studio served as the private residence of Dorothy and her husband, Robert Reister. The Reisters purchased roughly 23 acres in 1958 to construct their summer house. Over the next roughly half-century, the Reisters purchased additional lands in the area as a way to conserve the natural landscape around them. The nominated boundaries, which we're taking a look at here, correspond to their original 1958 land purchase, which dates to the era of private residential use of the property. In the future, the art park property could be evaluated as an expansion. As I said, that was established in 1992. The Dorothy Reister House and Studio is significant under Criterion C as a highly intact example of a mid-20th century modern house and artist studio that reflects the artistic vision of the well-known regional sculptor Dorothy Reister. The period of significance begins with the initial construction of the house, beginning in 1959, and concludes with the erection of the last building associated with the property as a private residence, what is called the Art Barn, which was constructed around 1970. This is the exterior view of the house here. Along with local contractors, Dorothy and Robert Reister, they designed and built their property beginning in 1959. The house originally, as I said, served as their summer house, and they resided in Syracuse. In 1965, the property became their full-time house. The house was designed as a cone with large windows on the north facade, which you can see here, framing views beyond of Cazenovia Lake. Besides the functional use of these windows for the view, the use of large expanses of glass and windows is common in mid-century architecture at the time. Like other architects and designers of the 20th century, Dorothy Reister intentionally constructed the house using common materials such as concrete block and plywood. But, like she did with her sculptures, much of the house was built by hand and by trial and error, it's sort of evolving out of mistakes and lessons learned. The Reisters noted that they were influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright and how he combined architecture and nature. And one example of this is, we sort of saw in the initial slide as well, that the house is nestled up on top of the hillside, sort of set into the woods, into the forest, rather than sort of being plopped in the middle of the field as sort of this sculptural in the round. Dorothy, in the design of the actual house, also emphasized the horizontal line by striking the mortar joint in the concrete block, which is a sort of common motif found in Wright's designs as well. This is the interior of the house. It's really in here where Dorothy's sculptural sensibilities are more apparent. She created the fireplace by hand, casting it twice after the first attempt fell to the ground. The bluestone flooring was puzzle piece fit together. I think there's a quote in there about over cocktails at night. The staircase to the second floor is also sort of treated as a sculptural element with these sort of floating stairs suspended sort of precariously from the ceiling. In the rear sitting room, which is at the lower image here, Dorothy made a large sand cast wall embedded with found objects like pebbles and seashells, and impressed with the variety of shapes and forms. When the house became the full-time, year-round residence of the Reisters in 1965, they decided to expand and add additional space used for entertaining. And around 1970, they constructed this library addition on the west side of the main house. It's a hexagonal addition and linked to the conical form of the house by this sort of greenhouse-like hyphen that again emphasized Dorothy's love of bringing nature and architecture into conversation. At the other side of the house, the Reisters also added a garage and entry vestibule, which they did in the late 1970s or early 80s. And while this is a non-historic addition, it does relate to the house's use as a private residence. Located near the house is the A-frame studio building that was constructed in 1962. The A-frame design allowed for this sort of large, open interior volume with high ceilings that was suitable for Dorothy's large-scale sculptural pieces and her welding equipment. The north and south elevations are nearly completely made of glass, allowing lots of natural light into the workplace. The studio has received several additions in the forms of barns, including the Art Barn, which was added in the early 70s, and the Winter Gallery, which was added by the Art Park facility in 1994. Although Dorothy Reister and her husband vacated the house in 1994, their collection of furniture, sculpture, artwork, books, collectibles, accessories, remains largely intact to their time of residence. And occasionally the house is now used to serve for meetings and also to serve as the Art Park offices. It still has a sense of feeling and association linked to Dorothy and her artistic vision. Just a recent update since we prepared the draft nomination, we've also just received a copy of her CV, so we'll include that in the nomination as well, which has a list of her exhibitions and her different various works. So this is the Dorothy Reister house and studio.
Does the house have local designation?
It does not that I'm aware of.
Is
No.
there any important that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
There's an energetic land conservancy in the Cazenovia area. Do you know whether any of the property or the property that's outside the nominated land has been placed under easement? Because
I believe some of it may have been, yes.
you like to make the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Paul, you want to say? All in favor?
I have one more vote for the State Review Board that I wasn't able to do earlier in my career. This is the schooner Pioneer, built in 1885. It's currently at South Street Seaport in New York. In the 19th century, there were literally thousands of these small sloops and schooners. They served almost as the tractor trailers of their day in freighting bulk freights through our rivers and harbors and bays. Relatively small, about 70 feet in length on deck, relatively flat bottom, and they could do one thing that tugs and barges couldn't do. They could get into very shallow tidal areas where there might not be docks or permanent shore facilities, and they could load brick, they could load casting sand, all kinds of bulk cargo such as that. None remain today under sail. There's an example of one at Mystic Seaport that's in a barn right now in poor condition, but the Pioneer is the only one that still sails in the Atlantic states that we're aware of. And the other distinction that Pioneer has is she was built of iron, one of only 2 schooners of her type that we know that were built of iron, and she's the only one that survives. So it's important not only to represent the type of craft that we're working in our harbors in the 19th century, but also for the technology that she embodies. Her rig was taken down early in the 20th century. She became a derrick barge or a stick lighter. Later she became a motorized fuel barge, but she was rediscovered in the 1960s, restored between 1966 and 1968, and she became part of the South Street Seaport in 1970, and since 1974 she's been involved in educational sales. She's been involved in sail training, and she's still sailing today, and I understand our chairman has been on her deck as well. So that's what we have for the Pioneer. Any questions?
Are those historic photographs of the Pioneer, or?
No, those are just generic photos of 19th century schooners. They're actually interesting. The one on the bottom is a rare photo from 1859. The one above, I think, was 1866, but you can see it's really the same type of craft, and literally there were thousands of these in New York Harbor, the Delaware River, Boston. They were ubiquitous, and it's surprising so few are left today.
Semi-trailer trucks have been.
Yes.
I am going to have the pleasure of nominating it, and I saw Randy stick his hand up, so Randy will second. All in favor? Maybe we could do a state board meeting on that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mark claims that this is his last proposal, but I think we'll find another vote.
That's what I was thinking. He's not going to get out of it that easy.
Okay, I have 9 proposals for your review, and I suspect your scrutiny. We're going to begin in Middletown with the New York, Ontario, and Western Railroad Middletown Station, sort of a long name. Let's call it the O&W for now. A building, as you can tell from some of the images provided, suffered a pretty disastrous fire in 2004. It was in service until that time. The building was built in 3 stages. The first stage was built in the early 1890s to the designs of Bradford Lee Gilbert, a very well-known New York architect. The hallmark of his practice really was railroad station design. Subsequent additions in 1902 and 1920 brought it to its fullest extent. Those were by David Canfield, a Middletown-based architect. This was one of a number of stations in Middletown. You probably know Middletown really was a railroad town. I think we had 5 or 6 railroads that bisected at one time. It was the terminus of the O&W line. The O&W, until its failure in the mid-1950s, was really the big station and the big railroad presence in Middletown. So we had this building, we had a record storage building, we had a freight house, and further up the line we had a very substantial rail yard with a turntable, machine shop, so on and so forth. Romanesque design, you can see original elements, top left and right and bottom left. What happened is the building had the south tower, a single-story section. They added the north tower, and eventually they basically joined these two stories and a more modern sensibility between them. So basically it was erected, there's our record storage building, built about 1915. It was erected both as a station for the passenger line and also as the administrative offices of the O&W. I believe this is an extremely important resource for Middletown. This is an EPF grant application that's coming in, so we're hoping, obviously, to get this building listed and get it back into service. And that is the O&W station.
Is there any significance to that design? It's kind of a neat thing. I wouldn't associate it with a railroad unless it's the
What's that?
tracks or something. In the corner image there.
Lower left.
Oh, lower left, what, just the low relief carving, the Romanesque work?
Yeah, is that emblematic of that railroad line? Or?
It's more emblematic just of the aesthetic more than anything.
Jay moves the O&W station. And could we have a second? Chuck seconds, all in favor?
Oh, sorry, I deprived you of a couple of interior images here. Building probably familiar to most all of you, I would think. 44 Central Avenue, the building at 44 Central Avenue, for lack of a better name. I would like to, at this juncture, point out Amanda Lukowitz, who has joined us. She prepared the documentation. We thought she did a very thorough job in doing that and adding some architectural context later on based on some reports that have been generated relative to the Skemmerhorn Row in New York City. We grappled with this initially about nominating this building, whether it should be nominated with the adjacent building. Ultimately, we decided that probably the best course of action, given the relative rarity, the fact the building is really expressive of its early use and continued use as a wholesale grain store as well as warehouse, that we would nominate it individually. It's a pretty rare resource for Albany, built at a location called Robinson's Point, the convergence of two major transportation networks, really in the immediate pre-canal era. Jay or Amanda, if you'd like to say a word about the building, I would invite you to do so. Don't feel obligated.
Amanda knows a lot better than I do.
And really, we should point out the most impressive feature, I hope we have depicted here. This comes down over your desk, doesn't it, Jay? Is that your desk? No. The winch wheel, which is a pretty rare feature. It appears to have been retrofitted fairly early in the building. Whether or not this was built contemporaneously with the adjacent building is sort of inconclusive. They share a Flemish bond facade. That could certainly be done after the fact. So in any event, very rare building. It continued to be used in the manner for which it was built until the 1940s. So a pretty rare and significant resource. We have a letter of support from Assemblyman McDonald's office. I should point out this time we also have letters of support from his office for the factories we're going to look at in Troy and in Manans as well, and from the Albany City historian Anthony Opalka, who's also here with us today. And that is building at 44 Central.
Very interesting historical context in the nomination. I'd be happy to move this nomination.
All seconds, all in favor?
Aye. I should probably recuse myself.
Anybody abstain?
Yes.
Okay, Shadow Cliff in Upper Nyack in Rockland County, very interesting resource in its sort of layered history. Circa 1921, neoclassical house, a 44-room residence built for Eleanor Manville Ford. Strangely, we don't know the designer of this building, although Winston Perry in Nyack has identified plans for it. We really know nothing about its design or who actually built it. We know it was built for Ford, whose house in Grandview had burned the previous year. Thus, she mandated fireproof construction techniques for it. Understandable under the circumstances. So a really impressive piece of neoclassical inspired residential architecture, but we have a second, almost more compelling historic storyline, and that's the association of the Fellowship of Reconciliation with this building since 1957, I believe, when they moved out of New York City. FOR was founded in 1915 by the English-born Quaker, Theodore Hodgkin, and since that time, and approaching now its 100th anniversary, has long been interested in the rights of conscientious objectors, pacifists, and basically everything related to nonviolence and non-aggression. I think included in the nomination was the membership card of Martin Luther King Jr., which they showed me when I was there, who was on the advisory council of FOR for a long time. What we've been grappling with is whether this association with FOR is nationally significant, whether this building really, in its association with FOR, whether we can make that case, and we're still working on it. As you can see, extremely intact to its period, much loved. I love the account of Alfred Hassler from FOR, who said when we first bought it, we sort of rattled around in it. It was so big, but it's really come to serve their purposes very well. The unusual feature, of course, the organ cabinets at sort of at that landing in the staircase. I've seen that at Hildene and a few other houses, but that's about it. But really both an architecturally and historically significant resource, a wonderful resource.
Certainly it's strange that such an imposing house has no architect.
Yeah, I dug and dug and dug, and we have plans too, which unsigned drawings too, which is, but I really have looked hard and just we cannot find it. Winston Perry has lived in the Nyack all his life. He knows where everything is, and we couldn't find it either.
Ron has made a motion. Do we have a second? Jennifer seconds. All in favor?
Okay, another building, sort of an iconic local building, the Albany Felt Company Complex in the Menands, nearby to us. This documentation was prepared by Susan Lawson. Unfortunately, Albany Felt's run here is coming to an end. This is slated for development, or not bad development, of course, residential development. I should phrase that more carefully. It's unfortunate in that they were such great stewards of this building. It's such a well-loved building. It served their needs for so long. Its history is very well established. Albany Felt was part of really the larger paper-making industry. The felt was used in the machinery which produced the paper. They were really the leading manufacturers of the felt, and I think canvas as well for the machines. Now the building presents as sort of the single monumental, at least the mill component of it, a monumental construct. It's actually built in 4 phases between 1902 and 1938. Lockwood Green and Company were responsible for the first 3 phases of the building. What's interesting, as it progresses, the older parts are kind of characteristic mill construction, brick and heavy timber framing. As we get to the later parts, there's steel I-beams or concrete. So really you have the transition in terms of the building technology of the mills themselves present here. It was originally built just as their mill complex. Later on, they relocated their administrative facilities there. They really grew to assume a sort of international business profile. And as I say, the building is leaving service in this capacity, unfortunately, but we will find a way to keep it alive. Really well-maintained and cared for building. Significance, I'm sorry, under criteria, C for architecture and A for industry.
All in favor? It reminds me of the Doubleday's Country Life Press.
Yes, which I grew up about a quarter mile from.
That's what we can do here. I have been with the current owner's reps and his architects, and the proposal is for market rate apartments. It's the same gentleman who did Harmony Mills and Cohoes. He's looking to take that model into the overbrows.
That'd be terrific.
Very iconic building. Now, following on the heels of our cuff and collar manufacturing multiple property document, we have the second and third installments so far as the individual components. Van Zandt Jacobson Company factory in Troy, built in 2 campaigns between 1806 and 1902. Architectural office of Marcus F. Cummings and Son. Cummings was actually probably still involved in the design of this building. He died in 1905, at which point his son assumed the practice. Very characteristic, built both as administrative offices, but both as a manufacturing facility for detached cuffs and collars, which were really the staple of the textile industry in Troy. Interestingly enough, these buildings, it appears from the building, from the history, that they're actually used not by one company, but sometimes by multiple companies, with space leased out to other manufacturing interests. Same idea, mill construction, basically a brick envelope with heavy timber framing meant to basically collapse within the envelope of the building should a fire occur, rather than pulling the walls down. This probably has the most exuberant detailing of all the buildings in terms of its Romanesque styling, the upper floors, and that is Van Zandt Jacobson Company. And I should note that they were really one of the 2 probably principal manufacturers of detached cuffs and collars at the time. Questions?
One thing that I don't see in any of these Troy factory nominations or write-ups is an explanation of how the raw material and the fuel needed arrived and how the products went out. I mean, they're all close enough to have their own wharves on the river or railroad sidings, aren't they? But
yeah, and I think that was originally, I think it was riverbound, because there was a lot of advocacy so far as improvements to both, I think, the Champlain and the Erie Canal by these interests. But you know, at some point it becomes a railroad. Although this is an industry that by the 1920s is beginning to really go downhill. People don't want detached cuffs and collars anymore. Some of these companies just shift into full shirts, but some of them just basically go bottoms up.
so it was, in the end, it was trucking and not.
Yeah, I think if it survived, for those that survived that long.
Okay, which one of you full shirts will? Okay, makes the motion.
And I should mention Deb Shields from Missouri, who prepared the documentation for this, as well as the next building we're going to look at.
Chuck, what do you think? Okay. All in favor?
And while we're on the subject, Troy Waste Manufacturing Company factory, built in the first decade of the 20th century following the fire that destroyed their earlier warehouse. Troy Waste, as its name implies, was engaged in the manufacture of shoddy. Shoddy, of course, came to denote something of inferior quality, but really, if you look back at the time, it was really sort of a green initiative. It was a way to basically take this waste material, reconstitute it, and repurpose it for the textile industry. So this building was basically used to store the shoddy before it was delivered to their Cohoes mill, and also as a shipment point for the product and administrative offices. This is also Marcus Cummings' architectural office. This is probably his son, though. Cummings, the elder, has died by this time. You see this more streamlined, kind of neoclassical design, moving away from the Romanesque. Some of the nice features, we have some nice terracotta, sort of understated terracotta work, a band of Greek fret on the exterior, and some medallions. And really, largely the same animal we're seeing with all of these, in essence, mill construction, very large buildings being expanded in many instances with additions shortly after their construction. This building has suffered, as you can see from the bottom right, from some water deterioration, water penetration. We've lost some flooring here, but all in all, the building still reads very well, and we feel obviously maintains enough integrity to be nominated. That was Troy Waste. They don't care much for that name, but really it is the historic name, and they're wondering if there's a way to sort of downplay that. That's that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, and can we have a second? Randy, you second? Okay, all in favor?
The idea of a company that is in the business of manufacturing waste. Well, there can't be too many of them.
Change it to Troy Recycling Company.
Perhaps, yes, recycling would be better. Returning to our historic farmsteads at Pittstown, and honestly, at this point, I don't know how many are left, and I can't even remember how many we've done, but I will say this has been a really successful project. guided by Connie Keel. We were supposed to have a letter of support from Kirsten Gillibrand's office. It didn't come in time. She's very interested in what's being done here. You know, in essence, we are seeking to highlight some of these earlier farmsteads. For some of you who don't know the history, in Pittstown, basically the farm groupings, associated agricultural land. This is really the next in line. The Howard Odman Sherman Farm, 113 acres. The development here is mostly post-1850. William Sherman bought this property from the Brownell family, at which time most of the architectural components were developed. There's some debate about what might be earlier, what might not be. Some of that is obviously difficult to tease out. So in essence, we have the agricultural land, we have a number of outbuildings, including the main English barn, a granary, I believe 2 poultry houses, as well as 2 later pole barns. And I do want to note that I really want to talk to Jesse about the pole barns and their inclusion within the period of significance, whether we should really think that through a little better. Jessie Ravage has prepared the documentation. She is outstanding in terms of somebody who can go into land records and really get to the heart of the matter of how these places, the land was assembled and changed, and that is no small task. Later owned by the Odman or Odmanowski family, they shortened their name, and since I think the early 1980s, by the Howard family. So that is the Howard Odman Sherman Farm.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Jennifer, would you like to second? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Moving to something entirely different in an entirely different region. We have Northbrook Lodge in the Paul Smith's vicinity of Franklin County. This documentation was prepared by Susan Arena of Adirondack Architectural Heritage. Pretty remarkable, circa 1919 decentralized camp built for Wilfred McDougald, who was a Canadian senator who subsequently got unfortunately caught up in a political scandal in Canada and eventually lost the property. Interestingly enough, it's actually owned now by the Robillard family, who are also from Quebec, so it now has returned to that Canadian ownership. It is the work of Benjamin Munsell, who is a well-known contractor, builder, and designer of Adirondack camps in that period. What's interesting is although it's built on the decentralized model, we see them sort of moving away from really that rustic vernacular towards a more craftsman aesthetic, really still a blend of the two. Just really highly intact, a wonderful camp. The buildings are very, very nicely integrated into their site on Osgood Pond. Let me go to some interior views here. And the interiors, you see this sort of, with the exception of sort of the rustic stonework of the fireplaces, this more sort of refined interior aesthetic being moved away from bark-clad surfaces and that sort of thing. Really just a remarkable and highly intact camp. Really a pleasure to visit there. That is...
Are the foundations dry laid? I'd like to see the pointing on.
You know, I don't recall. I'd have to go back and look, to be honest with you.
They're so articulated.
A harder time remembering when I don't do the documentation myself.
Doug has moved. Joe, do you want a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's great to have another one of these Adirondack great camps. I know there are many more that, for one reason or another, haven't been brought forward, but I hope the best of them will get on the register.
Arch obviously is very active, Adirondack Architectural Heritage, in promoting that. So good partners up there. And I think my last proposal of the day, once again something sort of completely different, the Jonesville Rural Cemetery in Clifton Park in Saratoga County. This was brought to us by John Shearer, our friend and former board member. A somewhat modest but still a really handsome example of a rural picturesque cemetery. The design really exploited the existing topography of the site. Burton A. Thomas, land surveyor, landscape architect, and engineer, was responsible for the design. He's credited with some 25 rural cemeteries. He lived in the West Sand Lake area. What's interesting is you go into the cemetery, and it dates from the mid-1860s, but we have stones that go back to 1799. Obviously, at the time this was constructed, graves were relocated here. And if you were really one of the movers or shakers in the community, you got a hilltop site, but really a very wonderful, I went out there a few months ago, just a wonderful little cemetery with some great examples of period funerary art. That is Jonesville Cemetery.
I'll do that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Good morning. We have the expansion of the South Line Street Downtown Historic District in Syracuse. I have 4 nominations from Syracuse. We've done some support from the CLG for all of them. The original South Line Street Downtown Historic District was done in 2009, or 25 buildings, done as the sort of central business district of Syracuse. They had so many successful ITC projects out of there, the city decided to fund a larger survey of the entire downtown. And out of that survey came the idea to expand South Salina Street once they realized that the buildings in this corridor, sort of to the east of South Salina Street and to the south of South Salina Street, really reflected the same sort of context, with the addition of the new context of banking, which EDR that Exalt did a nice job pointing out. So this is sort of where it connects to the old district. You see the nice university block building there, and then a couple of very old skyscrapers in Syracuse. Same thing, it's all commercial buildings, most date to the early 20th century, all related to retail and that sort of thing. The nomination was interesting in that it went all the way up to the post-war context of Syracuse, talking about how after World War II we started to lose some of these buildings and we started to replace them with newer structures. It's a 1950 structure, a 1950 parking garage. You can't have viable downtowns in these cities anymore without parking. So they actually brought the context right up to this sort of urban renewal, right up to this sort of people are coming to these retail centers now and coming to these commercial and business centers downtown to buy parking. So they did a nice job maintaining the streetscape. I mean, you can see that, that's a 1950 building connected to an older 1927 building. It's all very regular. So I'm sure Randy's and Joanne are quite familiar with the district as well. That is the downtown South Salina Street Historic District boundary expansion.
There's some wonderful buildings in that district.
The university, that's one of my favorite buildings in all of Syracuse. It's gorgeous. The interior too is
And Travis,
yes.
Allows Bill this as well. The Troy buildings as well as this. Is your eye for bringing more buildings through the tax credit program for this?
That was the entire reason. They had 6 tax credit projects from the initial district, and almost all of them were to remove non-historic storefronts. So it was really did a nice job, and that was the goal of the bid, to create more tax credits.
As recently as at least 10 years ago, the Preservation Committee in Syracuse was struggling with the city administration to help them understand the concept of historic preservation as economic development, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a sea change that the current administration came into office getting it from day one. And it encouraged this development and recognition and proper treatment and local design guidelines and the whole bit. So.
And the planning department, Sir Tammy, does a fantastic job keeping cater all over everything immediately.
This is what many of us around the state have been trying to do in our communities for decades.
We haven't voted this. All in favor?
Sorry. This is Bellevue Country Club, also in Syracuse. We also have a letter of support from the Onondaga County Historical Association, who reminded me in the letter that Bill Clinton played on this course as president in 1999. We have a 1915 to 1916-ish Donald Ross designed golf course. Donald Ross is the sort of master golf architect of the United States. He's Scottish-born. He created Pinehurst No. 2 in North Carolina, which is an NHL for its effect on golf course design in America. The original course is just that sort of trapezoidally shaped thing. The addition is later in the 1970s. Ross designed courses that were meant to challenge you. He wanted you to think about every shot, so most of his courses are uphill and downhill with all sorts of weird side lies, bunkers that fall off into nowhere, bunkers in the middle of doglegs so that you get around this corner and you suddenly find yourself trapped. And it's really just a masterful use of the landscape. This is to the southwest of the city. It's up on Onondaga Hill. It has a beautiful view of the city, and it was cited just for that. The clubhouse that's there was designed by a local Syracuse architect, Justice Roland Crawford, who is a Syracuse University professor. The beautiful thing about this is they actually have all of Donald Ross's original blueprints for almost all of the halls. I think it mentions which ones were in there. And although they've redesigned the course somewhat by adding those 4 holes and turning a couple of the holes into a driving range, all of the old holes are actually still playable. When you have a landscape design like this, obviously it's all about mowing. This, if you just come a few months before that, just looked like the fairway of another hole, but that's actually the tee to one of Ross's original holes. They're restoring some of the bunkers. And for their 100th anniversary, they're actually going to have the course playable exactly the way Ross designed it in 1915. These are the signature Ross bunkers on many of the holes. He likes those low bunkers with the grass going right to the edge, and you can see it's just a nightmare for a golfer. He also likes slopes that fall away from the green, so if you miss the green there, you are stuck. So that is the Donald Ross design. Oh, I'm sorry. I do a couple pictures of the interior of the clubhouse as well. Obviously, this is right out of the 1916 designs of Stratford. That is Bellevue Country Club and in Syracuse.
Travis, the board wants to know that as part of your site visit and inspection, you played any.
I did not. I'm not a golfer, and I didn't know if it would be okay for a state employee to play on this course.
New York was the cradle for this pastime. We absolutely invented golf. It's great to see this nomination with each hole mentioned and spelled out that way. I don't think I've ever seen that with a golf club nomination.
I sort of was lucky in that the nomination for Pinehurst to NHL did it in that way, and I thought, oh, well, I'll just copy what they did for an NHL.
It makes you think about all the other courses that should be on the register and everything will be over time. I've got so much to say.
I just want to know if Randy was played with Bill Clinton when he was there.
No, I did not play golf either.
Did you caddy?
Could we have a second? We have a second. Thank you. All in favor?
Another Syracuse nomination. This is what was originally the Oddfellows Lodge, built in 1882 in a German neighborhood of Syracuse for a German Oddfellows Lodge. It was later expanded into an Oddfellows Temple. I guess there's very specific rules when you're an Oddfellows as to what can be a lodge and what can be a temple. Nice, again, great Romanesque building design for a fraternal organization. They built it with a library, public library on the first floor, apartments on the second floor, and then their lodge meeting rooms on the third floor. So you see a lot of nice shots here of the various, I lost my train of thought, of the apartments, excuse me. And then the lodge room on the third floor is actually still very much intact. It has all of its nice pressed metal ceiling and all of its Oddfellow symbols. I'm not an Oddfellow, I don't know what the meaning and rituals behind these symbols are, but I wouldn't want my apartment under the All-State. It is an ITC project done by a firm, the nomination is written by a firm in Syracuse, and it is planned for residents, for apartments. The Oddfellows Lodge and Temple.
No questions? Randy, will you make a motion?
Good. Sure. I'm getting
And then he has to
give myself in the next one.
Chuck? Okay, Chuck. All in favor?
Aye.
My final Syracuse nomination, this is the Courier Building that began its life in 1844 as Frazee Hall. It was built in 3 sections. It was the 1844 Frazee Hall, a slightly later cutlery block, and then that final sort of little triangular block here, combined somewhere in the 1860s. As Frazee Hall is mentioned in the nomination, had a very significant history, and unfortunately there's not really too much of it left to show in the next slide. The Frazee Hall was the spot where Daniel Webster gave a speech, basically wagging his finger at the citizens of Syracuse and saying that you better pay attention to the fugitive slave law. If not, they're going to send federal marshals into Syracuse and they're going to arrest people for not helping capture fugitive slaves. 6 months after that speech, the marshals tried that exact same thing. They tried to arrest the slave, and the people of Syracuse, rather than heeding Webster's advice, actually started to riot and freed the slave from jail and got him to Canada. It's known as the Jerry Rescue. It's a very famous episode that was nicely outlined. In the post-Civil War era, it became the home of the Syracuse Courier, which is a major newspaper there. You can see that the print up in the top right corner. And in its final phase of life in 1918 was when it became the Moose Lodge. This is a building right downtown. You can see it right next to City Hall, although City Hall is slightly different now with the tower. Amazingly, through this entire period, in the bottom left there, the balcony that Daniel Webster spoke from is actually still there. The building is reoriented now because of the way Syracuse is, so that it sort of doesn't face the main street like it did anymore. But you can see now mostly it reflects this 1918 period. The sort of Chicago-style windows, the retail on the first floor, but it still is very much readable as a wonderful building. The interior is still readable on the first floor. I just confirmed with Randy, you can still tell what the original sort of 1850s partitions are. And that is the Courier building. It is an ITC project, also being done for residences and commercial, or retail.
Joanne makes the motion. Are there questions?
Arts and crafts.
Paul's been a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye. And my final nomination finally got out of Syracuse. This is the John Losey House in Watertown in Jefferson County. Losey is a Red War vet from the lower Hudson Valley, one of the very first settlers to the Watertown area after the war. He got there in 1809. And you can see this is just a nice, very fashionable early National Period residence. There is certainly an abundance of stone throughout the Black River Valley. And Watertown itself, the city of Watertown, at the time the village, was really hitting its growth spurt in the 1820s. It was really becoming a major sort of hub and a major economic port with Canadian trade after the War of 1812. So you see a lot of these nice fashionable residences scattered around Watertown itself. This one is, again, on a hill outside of Watertown. It's called Dry Hill. Beautiful view of the Black River Valley, beautiful view of Watertown of Lake Ontario. And just everything you would expect from a fashionable residence of the 1820s. The Losey family owned it right up until the early 20th century when it was sold. And at that time, it got sort of a rehab. You can see the colored glass, the Victorian rule, a couple of other things. A lot of the period detail was left intact. You see the window boxes and one of the fireplaces there. And that is the John Losey house. Yes.
Anybody get into the attic?
I could not get into the attic.
Because what we found in the area up there is that a lot of the teens and 20s houses, particularly of this character, were stuck gable at the end walls.
Really?
And later adapted.
No, I did get in the attic. I didn't see. I'm sorry, I'm confusing with a different house.
Go to the end elevation photo here.
What's that?
Back up to the photo of the end elevation.
This one.
Don't you have one? But you have one of the gable end.
I did in the nomination itself.
If you look at the gable end, the raking cornice actually overlaps the stone lintel of the attic window.
Okay.
Take a look at that. Yeah. And then that's the kind of thing that you see where it just doesn't fit all of a sudden once they cut the step gables down.
Okay. And that's what is the fortune.
We got one of those in Champion and another one in Champion. But historically, in the early, the first quarter of the century, there were a lot of surprising number of step gables there.
I will certainly go back to pictures.
Why would they modify it?
They couldn't flash things particularly well to the step gables. And one of the ones that I ran into, I came down, talked to the historian, and I said, I'm finding evidence up in the roof, up in the attic, that this was a step gable. And she said, what's that? And I described it for her, and she said, well, that would make sense because his father's house right across the street, and she showed me a photograph of it. It's a mid-19th century photograph of his step gable father's house. A slightly larger version, actually not unlike that one.
Okay.
So that would be just a little asterisk worth putting in there, or whoever is saying it.
Sure.
Very interesting.
So I'll move.
And we have a motion. Do we have a second? Oh, one second. All in favor?
Thank you.
You seem to be progressively going from one end of the state of New York to the other. So I'm here to take you a little further west to Geneva, New York. And if you're not familiar with Geneva, which is in Ontario County, it's a small city on the foot of Seneca Lake. For those of you who are not familiar with Finger Lakes, the foot is on the north end, the head is on the south end. So this is on the foot, or the north end of Seneca Lake. And, Geneva was first settled in the late 18th century and incorporated as a village in 1806. And being on a major road, it quickly became the center of commercial, social, and religious activity until the Erie Canal opened and bypassing the village. And even though a feeder canal was opened in 1828, Geneva's growth was still slow but steady throughout the 19th century. Over time, it developed a reputation as a center of higher education with institutions such as Hobart College, the Geneva Medical College, the Delancey School for Girls, and the Smith Astronomical Observatory, which was listed recently in the National Register. The arrival of the railroad and the development of a nursery industry brought renewed prosperity to Geneva, and in 1898 it was incorporated as a city. Now, the sponsor for this historic district is the Geneva Business Improvement District. We've been trying for a few years to get a historic district going, and finally the momentum is there, so we want to keep moving on this. And I also need to say that the nomination is partially funded by a grant from the Preservation League of New York State. There are 75 contributing buildings representing the most cohesive, contiguous grouping of mid-19th to early 20th century commercial buildings in the city's downtown. And it's being nominated for this collection of architecture. The period of significance, and I believe your nomination said 1850 to 1930. That is incorrect. It's circa 1840 to 1930. That will be fixed in the draft. And the boundary extends from the north side of Seneca Street, which we see here, east to Exchange Street. And Exchange Street parallels the lake and the railroad. The rail tracks still run behind the buildings on the east side of Exchange. Switch pages here. The core of the historic district is the intersection of Castle and Exchange, which contains some of the oldest buildings in the district that developed along the east end of the street during the first stages of commercial development. And this was generally tied to lake transportation and trade. The gold-colored building that you see in the northwest corner, that's the upper slide, dates from the 1850s and features a cast iron column at the storefront entrance. Castle Street marks the north end of the district and roughly extends between the rail line on the east nearly to North Main Street on the west. The street also features some municipal buildings, City Hall seen on the lower left, and you can just barely see the National Register listed post office next to it. Running between Castle and Seneca is Linden Street with the slide in the lower right. And on S Street is another National Register listed building, the former Farmers and Merchants Bank, that was listed in 2008, and is currently an ITC project. One of the main reasons behind the district is to allow more commercial properties to take advantage of the federal tax credit program. And at a recent public meeting, the district, and I have people can back me up on this because they were there as witnesses, one of the property owners asked why anyone wouldn't want a historic district, especially with the tax credits. Need I say more? And believe me, that was a revelation to hear, because like I said, we have been trying for a number of years to get something going with a historic district. So we want to keep the momentum going as it is. Okay. Do you have any questions? Any comments?
Jay makes a motion.
Also.
Rick seconds, all in favor?
Thank you. We do have one letter of support from the Historical Society for the Historic District, and more are anticipated. Up next are two straightforward nominations for two houses in Bath and Steuben County, one in the town and one in the village, and they're both being nominated under Criterion C for architecture. The first one is in the village of Bath, and that's the Martin Quick House seen here. It's a highly intact brick Italianate style house constructed 1877 and 1878. And it also has two contributing buildings on the property, a barn and an outhouse. It retains a number of features such as the bracketing and the overhanging roof. And in the interior, There's a wealth of surviving period features such as plasterwork, woodwork, fireplace mantels, just to name a few things. The house was built for Martin Quick, who in spite of his success as a telegraph operator on the Erie Railroad, he seemed to be dogged by bad luck, according to the nomination, and I won't go into detail, but that is well described in the nomination. The house was sold to Dominic McFeely in 1898, who was a livestock dealer, and apparently he purchased it because of its close proximity to the railroad line. Literally, when Quick had the house built, he could step outside and walk just across the street to the Erie Railroad Depot, and he was at work. And as stated in the nomination, the Quick House represents the simpler detailing of earlier versions of the style rather than the later, highly decorative examples of high Victorian Italianate, which was popular toward the latter part of the 19th century. The house retains substantial integrity due to its period of significance and remains an impressive architectural landmark in the village of Bath. Do you have any questions? Yeah.
I was just pleased to see that the author made an effort to at least sketch some sort of plans. She did it on the other one as well. Always good to see that stuff.
We're trying to get in the habit of regularly asking the consultants, can you please give us a floor plan? Because we explain to them, a lot of times you're not going to see that, so you have to literally walk through the house, so it really does have to have a floor plan.
Ron has made the motion. Jennifer, do you want a second? All in favor?
The other house is outside of the village. And this is in the town of Bath, and just for reference, the village is kind of like smack dab in the middle of the town. And this house is just a little further north. This is the Henry C. Myrtle house, also in the Italianate style, but with many more, much more decorative period features. And probably due to the fact that it was wood construction as opposed to brick construction as in the previous. Also, too, seems like Mr. Myrtle was a very successful farmer. Was constructed for Henry Myrtle in 1876 to 1879. In addition to the house being made, there's also a contributing barn, an outhouse, and a chicken coop. The house remained in the family until 1948. Construction of the house appears well documented through family records, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of historic fabric in the interior that dates to the period. A lot of the work, I would need to have been the maid in this house, to dust and clean and polish all of that. So as I said, it's very clear that he was a successful farmer. Do you have any questions or comments about it?
I was curious about the end of the period of significance. It was 67,
right.
Because that's the last time they sold off property. And I was thinking that if you do that for every nomination, things are going to get weird.
Not only that, I noticed when I was rereading the nomination last night that she kind of contradicts herself. She says that the parcel was sold in 1948, and she says in 1967. So I have to go back and ask her about that. And also, too, I think that the period of significance should end in 1948, when it was sold out to the family. But again, I still need to clear that up with
I thought that's what you said, that one was sold out of the family. Maybe I read it wrong, but.
No, she does contradict herself. But anyway, I'll double check on that and I'll get this.
That staircase is 100. It's lovely.
It's amazing.
Pocket doors, wow. Doug, will you make the motion? Okay, were you good? Absolutely. And 90 seconds, all in favor?
Speaking of successful farmers, apparently at one time it was a really good profession to be in. Very successful. This is the Romantic T. Miller House in Wheatland, which is the house itself, even though it's in the town of Wheatland, is just south of the village of Scottsville, if you're familiar with Monroe County. Built in 1869 to 1870, the Romantic T. Miller House is a two-story Italianate-style residence of brick and masonry construction, with an early 20th century colonial revival-style full-height entrance and sleeping porch, and another colonial revival era porch on the east side, both added in 1914. The house was designed by Rochester architect Isaac Loomis, and the porches were done by Claude Bragdon. Originally, it was thought that the brick was made in Scottsville, since the Millers were in the brick-making business. But additional research, which I just found out from the owner, the current owner, revealed that the bricks were actually made in Rochester and shipped to Scottsville via the canal. So there's kind of like an implication in the document that says that, oh, the Millers made, the bricks. Of course, because they were in that business. I will make sure it's very clear that the bricks came down from Rochester and not from Scottsville. The top right-hand image shows the original porch that had been designed by Loomis. And right below it, you can see the one that was designed and added in 1914 by Claude Bragdon. Here we have the east side of the house. Again, you can see the original porch and the historic image, and then the one that was added by Claude Bragdon, or at least designed by Claude Bragdon. And the image in the lower right is a recent porch added by Vera Architecture for the current owner, and they used the Bragdon entrance as inspiration to make the new porch compatible with the house, the rest of the house. Just to recap, the property was inherited by Etta Fraser Miller in 1862. She later married Romanta Miller, that was 1866. She retained ownership of the farm until her death in 1927. And due to Romanta Miller's war injury, there's some speculation that the farm operation was rented or leased and was directed by Etta. It was known as the Fraser Farm locally. Later evidence does show that Romanta Jr., the oldest son, leased out the land for his parents. And as you can see, the house retains a high degree of integrity. The current owners have restored when possible or replaced in kind. They bought the property directly from the family in 1974, so there's been essentially two owners of this house. The owners just reminded me too that the barn was moved to its current location from another part of the farm, but the move was done during the period of significance. I also asked them recently if any of daughter Sophia's gardens existed, and she said unfortunately no, the homeowner that is. And I want to leave you with the image of the family. 3 of the sons went to Oberlin College, 2 of them continued on to graduate from Harvard. Son Royal graduated from the Harvard School of Divinity. Royal, if you look down in the first row, he's the one kind of like in the back with the glasses. The one who's sitting there looking directly at you is Romanta Miller Jr. He is the one who went to Chicago and became a millionaire by establishing his own business, the correspondence school. And on that same row on the end is brother Oliver, who joined him in Chicago. You can see the parents, and between them is Sophia, and Sophia is the one who stayed living on the property after her siblings parted ways and relocated to other parts of the United States. All of the children were college educated, and all of the daughters were educators. So it's such a great photograph I have of that one. So that's the Romanta Miller house in Wheatland, eventually Scottsville.
Do you think Claude Bragdon made a mistake by putting that everywhere he did?
It's kind of jarring, isn't it? But actually, Romanta Jr. Paid for it. So maybe he was trying to look out for his parents because they were aging at the time. Who knows? But as some people will say, there's no accounting for taste.
Who will make the motion? Joanne, did you move?
Sure.
Okay, Chuck seconds, all in favor?
Okay, the last property that I have is also in western New York. It's the First Presbyterian Church in Niagara Falls, Niagara County, which started off as a late Gothic L-shaped building. Well, now it's an L-shaped building, constructed with stone with round arched windows and entrances. The original structure dates from 1849 by Buffalo architect Calvin Fay, and there's very little work documented to Kelvin Fay in New York State because very soon after this he moved to Savannah, Georgia, and that's where he did most of his work. There's an 1879 chapel that was added by George White, who was a local architect, who was also a member of the congregation, and it became even more famous because it became Niagara Falls' first mayor in 1898. Also added onto it in 1921 was a fellowship hall, again, a local architect by the name of Martin Miller. The prominent feature of the church is the crenellated towers. The middle, or bell tower, is a redesign of a clock tower, and the clock was removed in 1914, and that's when the center one was made to match the rest. The interior of the sanctuary has also been remodeled twice, once in 1921 and again in 1957. And if you look on the lower left, you'll see the sanctuary in its current form. You can see some of the 1921 features, the cove ceiling and the dome skylight, which you see the lower right. The upper images are of the fellowship hall and show the opalescent glass window that was reversed to be displayed. Originally, it was at the end of the chancel, but in the 1957 remodeling, it was reversed so that it could show prominently within the 1921 fellowship hall. The church has a lengthy list of prominent Niagara Falls people associated with it, which I'm not going to go into that litany, even though it is a church, but you can only take litany so far. But I do want to mention one person, and that is Lavina Porter. The Porters were very significant members of this church, and if you remember a few years ago, for those who were on the board at that time, Lavina's house was nominated to the National Register. It was built by her father, but she never lived in it. She donated, or she allowed the church to use it as a manse, and it's known as the Presbyterian manse. And anyway, do you have any questions about this nomination? They're very excited about it. They're one of the few historic properties that is still in what you would think of as downtown Niagara Falls. Fortunately now they do have the park behind them, but they're literally surrounded by other late 20th century buildings. They're far enough away from the casino, but still, it's, like I said, one of the few historic properties still surviving in downtown Niagara Falls.
And urban renewal was about to destroy it too, I guess.
Yes, if you read in the nomination, they came very close to losing that church.
Could we have a motion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Hello. We're starting with I want to start by letting you know that all of our New York City nominations, even from our new staff members, did receive support from New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. We're following on the heels of the commission to designate Crown Heights, which has been my pleasure to work with probably the most intact neighborhood thus far that I've worked on. This is over 1,000 buildings, and I think we have 31 that are non-contributing. Landmarks designated this about 6 years ago. We're going to designate what they acknowledge as phase 1 and 2, and we have a calendared phase 3. So we're going to have a potential boundary expansion here. This entire neighborhood is eligible for the homeowner tax credit. The nomination was funded in part by the Preservation League of New York State, and we're going to be working with the league to do a major outreach push to these neighbors, try and get a Brooklyn neighborhood using the credit with great frequency like we've seen in other parts of the state. A little bit of history of the neighborhood. The district's development was largely informed by the availability of multiple lots for speculative real estate development, whose appeal was further enhanced by the introduction of ongoing expansion and transportation into the area, concurrent with the introduction of the stagecoach lines and horse-drawn omnibuses connecting Brooklyn's Fulton Ferry starting in the 1850s. The biggest thing that I sort of thought when we were looking at it, I use the word a suburb sort of lightly, but it truly is a Brooklyn suburb. The early development in the mid-1850s began with a lot of these freestanding houses that you'll see in here. One of the interesting things about the neighborhood is that it really is distinctively residential. There are not many ecclesiastic commercial buildings and civic buildings throughout the neighborhood. What really does define this neighborhood is this massive collection of all of these row houses from every typology from the 1870s into the early 20th century. And you can see every form right up into these 1920s, sort of funny guys down here on the bottom. The other building type to study in here is once the metro came through on the Parkway, we did lose a lot of buildings, and what came up in the early 20th century, 1920s, were a lot of these apartment buildings. So this is the Crown Heights neighborhood, Crown Heights North specifically. And if you haven't been there, I was really amazed. I've never been to Crown Heights. I've certainly been through Bedford-Stuy, and to get in here and to see something this intact really, really blew my mind. It's quite impressive, and the nomination is also very impressive itself. Any questions about Crown Heights?
One of the early freestanding mansions that was mentioned particularly in the nomination was the Dean Sage House by Russell Sturgis. And there's a connection with this part of the world because Dean Sage made a fortune, his family did, in the lumber industry up here. And the Sage Estates in Albany must have been their country place when this was their suburban place down in Brooklyn.
Joanne is making a motion. Rick, do you want a second?
Sure.
All in favor?
Most distinctive and culturally significant neighborhoods. This has been on the watch list for quite a while. The Preservation League had it as one of their 7 most endangered places in New York State. And this nomination is sponsored by the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation. Kathy Howe established the boundaries working with the Society and with Andrew Dolkart, who's the preparer of this nomination. That certainly sent a very clear message to City LPC, who does have a portion of this calendar for their upcoming agenda. Things slowed down a little bit for LPC in between administrations, but their boundaries are right within here as well. Since you've read the nomination, we have support from the Manhattan Borough President, Senator Brad Hoylman, Assemblymember Glick, the South Village Neighbors Association, the Soho Alliance, the Central Village Block Alliance, the Morton Street Block Alliance, certainly the Preservation League, and the Historic Districts Council. I'm going to read you just very briefly something from Andrew's very wonderful nomination. The streets of the South Village Historic District are lined with a rich array of buildings of architectural, historical, and cultural significance. The district exemplifies the residential development and redevelopment of neighborhoods in New York City as they evolve to accommodate different groups of people. The row houses, tenements, industrial lofts, churches, and other buildings in the area reflect the changing character of life in New York over a period of almost 150 years. In the South Village, initial development took place in the form of single-family row houses for affluent households. Later, the district became a significant center for working-class immigrants, including those from Germany, Ireland, France, and especially from Italy, as well as a significant population of African Americans. The housing stock shifted to reflect these changes, with row houses expanded and converted into multiple dwellings, but primarily with the construction of custom-built tenements housing many families. The buildings in the district provide a history of evolution of tenement design. In the early 20th century, stores and restaurants opened that reflected the bohemian population's requirements. The development continued into the post-World War II era as stores and entertainment venues opened to cater to the beat crowd, the gay and lesbian community, the folk music culture, and other social developments. Sensory break, the computer no longer works. Sorry. Okay, so forming the boundaries, you can see a lot of this was a kind of a discussion of do you expand Greenwich Village. It certainly is a well-known cultural center in New York City. Well, no, South Village really is very distinctive, and then following that, you can look at the 1820 census map, which shows the amount of Italian Americans living, and it pretty much closely corresponds with some integrity things carving out the rest of the district. The early buildings from 1820s, 30s, and 40s are typical Federals and Greeks. The most exciting thing about this, and I think that really does demonstrate a large difference between Greenwich Village, is the amount of tenements you'll find here. Old law tenements, new law tenements. That's the character-defining feature between the two neighborhoods, and it's really only until the 1930s when socially they start to meet. Again, sort of like Crown Heights, not an enormous amount of civic and ecclesiastic buildings in the neighborhood. It's got a very strong residential component with the addition of both historic and new storefronts along the streets. And again, it is the South Village, so you're going to get some eclectic design and some great apartment buildings mixed throughout. This does consume the McDougal-Sullivan Gardens Historic District. This has a sort of nice connection. You've got these pre-law, old law tenements, where the stoops have been removed in the 1920s, and that was sort of a hinge for the social change that you associate with the South Village and Greenwich Village. And great, amazing cultural institutes, some that survive, the Provincetown Playhouse, the Gaslight, Maury's Restaurant, Frank Lloyd Wright, and significant architects would get together and talk about their trade. And certainly this is where Bob Dylan performed for the first time, and Joan Baez, the emergence of the gay community in Manhattan. This is a particularly exciting neighborhood. The threat was very real here, and we're seeing quite a bit of sea change in this great neighborhood nestled in between Soho and Greenwich Village. Can I answer any questions about the draft?
Well, I'd just like to say it's a tour de force. In terms of the synthesis of information, of history, culture, and a lot of hard, useful, factual information. We must find a way to get it published, because it ought to be a book on the market in New York and elsewhere. Great fun reading this, and a terrific edition.
The Greenwich Village Society is so eager for your vote, and they want a final draft to put on their website immediately. And he's been reminding me on a regular basis. They do a pretty good job with some of their walking tours. Andrew's been working with them for quite a long time. It's an excellent idea, and I'll pass that along.
We have a motion. What, do you want a second?
Sure.
All in favor?
All right, this is wrapping up last semester's work with the Columbia students. Our new staff members did a great job presenting some of the sacred sites proposals that had come through. Andrew's going to teach the course again. So we'll get 12 more of these come the end of the spring semester with recommendations from Landmarks Conservancy, Historic District Council, and we did a big survey of who felt there was a real need to pick up some of these and give some of these students real-world training. This is from the Historic Districts Council, a little different than a neighborhood for them. But they listed this among their 5 most distinctive places in New York. It is the Port Morris Ferry Bridges, which is frequently called gantries. These are technically ferry bridges, as they connected people to ferry boats on the waterway. We got support from the citywide administrative services who reviewed it, and we had a great kind of education with what is the National Register, what does it do. They don't have an idea right now for what to do with the gantries. Certainly things like Gantry Park, with the ferry bridges, places like Gantry Park have utilized these industrial structures into their park design. But they became supportive knowing that they didn't know what exactly to do with it. It's their responsibility to be stewards, but obviously the idea would be to move forward with some kind of industrial park design. These ferries connected to Long Island and Queens, obviously. Any questions about the draft?
The thing that struck me was that, particularly with more fragile resources like this, more photos and more details would be great.
More photos and more, okay.
Getting it up close to even bolt patterns and such.
Okay.
There's no way to tell.
Yeah, it was the initial portion, it was hard to access the site, obviously, and I could not recommend students to hop fences and break in as much as I think most people in this room have done it many times, but I did not suggest that they do that. So, more documentation. That's a very good recommendation.
Randy, going to make the motion? Okay, George, seconds, all in favor?
When to circle back to our previous Rockaway conversation about the grant for the synagogue, while we can't provide support, our colleagues at the Conservancy are coming in with sacred site for them. So that's good. This is exciting on a different level. Those familiar with Yuri Kaufman and the work he's doing, Bill presented Albany Felt. We know his great visual example of successful preservation in Cohoes with the Harmony Lofts. He's now working in Queens. And he responded to this great RFP for the Rockaway Courthouse, which was the magistrates and the municipal courthouses. This is going to become a much-needed medical center for the Rockaways, and that need following Hurricane Sandy makes this an enormous contribution to Queens. This building is incredibly interesting, typical classical court design. What sort of blows me away and tells you a lot about the construction of this building, it was constructed in 1931. It only functioned as the courthouse until '62, when vacant in '74, and has been vacant for that long. The inside, there is deterioration, but an incredible amount of fabric that is restorable. This is a big initiative. We would have liked to have brought this to you, maybe when we had seen a bit more rehabilitation work. However, Mayor Bloomberg is going to be cutting a ribbon for this before the 31st of December to initiate. So it's a wonderful ITC project, also written by Susan Lawson. This is the Rockaway Courthouse. Any questions about the draft?
Ron has moved it, do we have a second? Seconded, all in favor?
All right, further up, north in Queens, in the Astoria and Long Island City neighborhoods, is the Schomer Piano Factory. This has been designated by LPC. It's probably one of the most prominent historic buildings on the East River in Long Island City and Astoria. This is a completed ITC project by our friends at Higgins Quaysbar supervising the rehabilitation. It was previously residential and got more of just a facelift. So when we had got this project, there was a lot of interior removals, and just to end the conversation about the rehab, very sensitive to looking at what they could rehabilitate with the open plate. Now, Schomer has an interesting history, incredibly successful in piano making, not quite on the level as something like Steinway, which is also well associated with Queens. They actually became much more successful for upright pianos, which were more domestic for the middle class, to bring it into everybody's home. The great thing about the factory is they actually stayed here until 1982, long past mass production of pianos, and they hung on to the site for quite a bit. It's designed by Berger and Bayless, who have buildings both in Soho and Tribeca. If anybody's familiar, you know this building, and certainly its clock tower stands out. Any questions about the draft?
Jay has made the motion, do we have a second? All in favor?
Thank you. We're going to wrap up the review portion of our meeting with a site in Buffalo. This is the Haupt Manufacturing Complex. It was constructed between 1910 to 1928. They were the makers of fine wire wheels, which is sort of typical of Buffalo Industries. Everybody has one niche and always a national leader. What's very exciting about this is part of the city's belt line that runs through the city. There's a large survey that we're overseeing and the survey and evaluation unit of nodes along the belt line. This particular complex has a very interesting site on the belt line in our Black Rock planning neighborhood that we'll be honoring later today. This has a strategic location across from Pierce Arrow, which makes sense, wire wheels, Pierce Arrow. And on the belt line, we now have 4 corners of ITC projects. This one is a completed ITC project for a portion of the complex. This was done by Rocco Termini, who did the tax credit project on the Hotel Lafayette, which is certainly one of our strongest visual examples in Buffalo of the program. The design has been incredibly sensitive to the open floor plates of the manufacturing, keeping the fire doors, exposing the timbers. And they're wrapping up this project. So we've had it in-house for a little bit. Although it's not every single building within the complex, the hopes are to move forward with other individual owners and sort of transform the entire complex using the ITC. This was prepared by Frank Kowski as well, our former board member. Answer any questions about the draft?
Okay, we have a motion from Doug, and we have a second from Chuck. All in favor? Thank you. Good group. And before we have a motion to adjourn, back to the calendar for 2014, and we have suggested dates. March 13th, these are all Thursdays. June 12th, September 11th, and December 4th.
Could you run those by again?
Sure. March 13th, June 12th, September 11th, and December 4th. And it looks like if those of you who know your calendars, let's hear from you if you see problems, but if not, that is at least our tentative schedule for the coming years. And now we will entertain a motion to adjourn, and lunch has been delivered. So who will make that motion? Chuck makes the motion. And all seconds, all in favor?